Hello, folks. So, we need to talk about, unfortunately, TikTok, Gen Z, and Osama bin Laden. Now, I've known about this for like a couple weeks or maybe a week. I don't remember exactly when the when this all started happening, but it's continuing to trundle along, and I figure I would talk about it. All right. So, to summarize, for those of you who aren't in the loop, Gen Z folks on TikTok discovered Osama bin Laden wrote a letter to America, and it was published in The Guardian, and has been up for like 20 years online. And the TikTokers found it, read it, and decided it was based as hell, and started talking about how based and cool Osama bin Laden was, and how he was right all along, actually. And well, I figure it's time we go into this. All right. Uh, so here we go. This actually got to such a degree that TikTok had to remove the hashtag for Osama bin Laden's letter to America because so many people were talking about letter to America and Osama bin Laden in glowing terms. Again, and I cannot emphasize this enough, if somebody finds this segment on YouTube and you're from TikTok, I need to emphasize for you, Osama bin Laden was not based. He was a fundamentalist religious bigot who wanted to violently impose his religious and political ideology on anyone who disagreed with him. That's his worldview. And not only that, he was the son of and heir to a billionaire fortune, and he was just the family fail son to such a degree that the rest of his family has had to basically like be like, nah, we want nothing to do with him. He's from one of the richest families on the planet. He was not a good dude. He was an incredibly huge hypocrite. And you all need to divest yourselves of this notion of American diabolism, because you can critique America and you can come up with accurate critiques of America without being a fundamentalist religious bigot. You can find people who critique American policy who aren't literal terrorists and who didn't self-describe as terrorists in the name of fundamentalist religious nationalism. Like, that's a thing you can do. This is like looking at like a neo-Nazi and being like, well, they have some good ideas about foreign policy. You really have to hand it to them. No, you don't. You don't have to hand it to them. You can find other people who are not neo-Nazis that have good and based foreign policy takes, that have those good takes that aren't neo-Nazis. You know, like, you don't have to look at the broken clock and be like, well, this broken clock was right was right a couple of times. Time to take the entire clock and just talk about how good it is as a clock. No, you don't have to do that. You don't. You don't gotta do that. So anyway, this actually got so much steam, largely as a result of Yashar Ali, who is a journalist and he posts a lot on social media. But he compiled this this compilation of TikToks, and well, here we'll just watch a few of them. Okay, I think this is the original TikTok that really started all of this, right? And kind of catapulted Letter to America into the TikTok psyche. After we go over all of this, we will go through Letter to America on stream live, and we'll talk about it. Because I have to say, and I'm talking to you guys, if you read Letter to America and you walked away being like, wow, Osama bin Laden was right, you are just, you're a mark, okay? You're the type of person who falls for like every Nigerian prince scam. You are not applying your critical thinking, and you're falling for literal terrorist propaganda, and not like some sort of like, I don't know, like a terrorist group that has like good foundational principles. Like, you can hypothetically come up with one of those, right? Like in Star Wars, the rebels were fighting for a righteous cause against the Empire, right? And they probably would have been classified as like terrorists. But you're literally falling for like one of the worst kinds of terrorists propaganda. And, well, we'll have to talk about that, because you need to think about that a little bit more. Here we go.
This morning I read Letter to America, which is Osama bin Laden's letter to America explaining why he attacked Americans. And
I'll stop you right there. That's not what the letter was supposed to do. It's not. I have news for you guys. When terrorists and, like, you know, neo-Nazis or religious fundamentalists write things, they aren't always honest about why. I don't feel like I should have to point this out, but I guess I will. I would think that a guy who masterminded flying planes into buildings in America and killed thousands of people might be capable of telling lies. I think that might be the case.
And I am ashamed to say that I not only have never read this letter, but I didn't even know this letter existed. It's wild, and everyone should read it. If you haven't read it yet, read it. However, be forewarned.
It was literally published by multiple news agencies and has been online for decades.
Warned that this has left me very disillusioned, and I feel the same exact way I felt when I was deconstructing Christianity. I feel a little bit just confused, like I have entered into another timeline. What is this? And yeah, so go read it.
So I just read A Letter to America, and I will never look at life the same. I will never look at this country the same. Please read it, and if you have read it, let me know if you are also going through an existential crisis in this very moment, because in the last 20 minutes, my entire viewpoint on the entire life I have believed and I have lived has changed. Please read that. It's a Roro.
I was gonna get to that, but literally, The Guardian had to take down the article from its website because people from TikTok kept coming and reading it and then being like, "Oh yeah, it's so based that Osama bin Laden was virulently anti-Semitic." That was so based of him to hate Jews. Like, they took it down to be like responsible in their journalism, and yeah, It was available when these people recorded this video. It was available on the Guardian's website, but they had to take it down because these people directed so much attention to it that was uncritical.
Entire letter.
I need everyone to stop what they're doing right now and go read. It's literally 2 pages. Go read A Letter to America. And please come back here and just let me know what you think, because I feel like I'm going through like an existential crisis right now, and a lot of people are. So I just need someone else to be feeling this too.
I need you to stop what you're doing and go read A Letter to America. It is literally the craziest thing I've read in a while. And while I can't say that I'm that surprised, I am pretty shocked. So go read it and tell me what you think, because I really also need to talk to other people about this.
This is the type of person who buys a handbag off of a stranger on the street and thinks it's a genuine Gucci bag.
And actually, before you even read the letter, I did want to mention, in reading the letter, I could only think of this tweet that I saw the other day. Under settler colonialism, any kind of resistance is branded as terrorist because the only acceptable violence is violence by the occupier.
I mean, I feel like again, a lot of this is going to be stuff I feel like I shouldn't have to explicitly point out, but Osama bin Laden deliberately planned 9/11 to provoke a violent reaction from the United States and the Western world at large in order for them to come to Afghanistan and kill a lot of people and occupy Afghanistan. The plan was quite literally to encourage violence against the Afghani people, and then use that violence to foment hatred and unity within the Muslim world. That was his plan. And that doesn't absolve the United States from the evil it did in Afghanistan, but it's this guy is just trying to justify setting into motion a series of events that led to the deaths of, millions of people. And it's just like, oh yeah, well, it's the deaths of those millions. That's what it took to unite the Muslim world against the United States. So that means it was worth it, right? Ha ha ha! So far, these TikTok videos don't really offer any substantial interpretation of what they just read. No, they don't. But you know what? These TikTok videos also got millions of people watching and supporting them. Like that's part of the problem, right? The lack of substance is almost like it's almost a feature. It's not a bug. It's a feature of these posts. It's the kind of thing it's the kind of thing where people, if they were far right extremists, would be saying, "Oh, I'm not making any arguments. I'm just asking questions. Haha. I'm not a Nazi. I just think everyone should. I just think you should read Mein Kampf. I think Hitler had a lot of really interesting things to say. Haha. You should go read it right now. Really, it changed my view. It changed my viewpoint dramatically. Maybe that Hitler wasn't such a bad guy. Haha. Like it is casual. It's almost like weaponized ignorance to deflect criticism.
So this is fucking insane. I just read Osama bin Laden's letter to America, which I will be going through right here, but it's actually so mind-fucking to me that terrorism has been sold as this idea to the American people, and honestly just so many Western inhabitants within certain nations, that this group of people, this random group of people, just suddenly wakes up one day and just fucking hates you, just wants you dead, wants you gone, and this is all because they believe that they're better than us. Like, that is the root of terrorism. It doesn't make sense. They just...
I mean...
Bin Laden should challenge Biden's presidential run. 2024, ha ha ha.
But no, that's the thing, right? This person's arguing that oh yeah, that's the mainstream, that's what's being taught in America, that one day Osama bin Laden just woke up and hated America, haha. No, it's not. actually. That if you actually bother to read anything about this, other than like Fox News propaganda, you'll know about the context of history and what's going on in that region. You'll know who Osama bin Laden is and what his goals were. You just have to like actually spend 5 seconds looking into it.
Hate your fucking nation, but reading this letter, it becomes apparent to me that the actions of 9/11 and those acts committed against the USA and its people were all just the buildup of our government failing other nations.
Nope. I mean, when I got the news in 2011 that we got him, reading his letter to America, knowing he was right. Oh my god. Look at how right he was.
Majority of these situations, and this letter was insanely eye-opening. I really urge everybody to Google and read it because I thought that I had quite a lot of media literacy. But this takes it to a whole nother fucking level where I was just like, holy shit, like propaganda is genuinely so deeply embedded into our fucking DNA.
You fell for the propaganda hook, line, and sinker! You fell for a terrorist's propaganda! And not just any terrorist, a fundamental extremist who wants to literally convert the entire world to his specific brand of Islam. God damn it.
Read a letter to America. You're probably waking up. You probably have a lot of questions. Welcome to the club. But we don't have a lot of time to sit and talk about everything because there's still so many puzzle pieces that we just do not know about.
Go read a letter to America. Like seriously, go read it. Type a letter to America in Google or whatever you use, then come right back. Because this makes a lot more sense. It explains so much. And I guarantee you it's going to blow your mind. And let's talk about it. So go read it, come back. Whew, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Nope. Yep, another format for the meme. Oh, he was so right. Nope. It all makes sense now. Mood since reading Osama's letter to America, rethinking things I grew up learning.
Osama bin Laden's letter to America.
The way this letter is going viral right now is giving me the greatest sense of relief. If you're Muslim and you've lived in the US since 9/11, you know more truth than the typical citizen.
Not if you're falling for Osama bin Laden's propaganda, you don't.
Now it's all coming to light because of Palestine.
Nope. You notice the media's trying to bury it. Yeah, they took it offline because of people like you. But it's been up for 20 years. It's literally been up online for 20 goddamn years. So, yeah. Again, some of these TikToks have millions, actual millions of views. And support. Hundreds of thousands of people being like, oh yeah, yeah, Osama bin Laden. I guess he was pretty based. Osama bin Laden creating Zoomer neo-Nazis from the fucking grave. Well, unironically, Erica, and this is something that America really hasn't reckoned with, Osama bin Laden achieved many of his goals. Like, he was, as far as, like, terrorists go, he was very successful at achieving his aims. Unfortunately, like his goal was to polarize the Middle East, the Muslim world, against the United States and Western powers, and he did that. You know, He had a lot of ambition to uniting the Muslim world underneath his particular brand of Islam, and he wanted to divide America to weaken America and the West. Like, yes, Bin Laden was a piece of shit. And good night, Ashley. Get good sleep. Like, he wanted to precipitate the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq as essentially a gigantic propaganda push to funnel more funds and manpower into Al-Qaeda, and in order to achieve wider ideological aims. Like, and he did, you know? And as far as like, oh, Western media is trying to bury all of this stuff, literally the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has a webpage that has been online for decades now, called Bin Laden's Bookshelf, and it's literally just pages upon pages of declassified material, publicly available U.S. government documents, what Bin Laden had in his house, like what kind of like English language books he had, media, etc. Like there's literally hundreds of documents available to you if you are interested in like things Osama bin Laden wrote and said. Like, it's not a secret. The government isn't trying to hide it from you, and the media isn't trying to hide it from you. The media just doesn't want to be held responsible for one of these like Zoomer TikToks like picking up a gun and like becoming like violently radicalized by reading Osama bin Laden's manifesto. You know, like, it's these aren't hidden things, right? And like essentially, like, if you go to the webpage right now, right, from The Guardian, this page previously displayed a document containing, in translation, the full text of Osama bin Laden's letter to the American people, which was reported on in The Observer on Sunday, 24th November 2002. The document, which was published here on the same day, was removed on the 15th of November 2023. The transcript published on our website had been widely shared on social media without the full context. Therefore, we decided to take it down and direct readers instead to the news article that originally contextualized it. And that goes to, basically, Osama issues new call to arms from, again, 21 years ago. And, yeah. It's 4,000 words. Again, this is talking about, you know, different government responses to it, and again, like, this is 2002. This is like less than a year after, or slightly more than a year after September 11th. And once this article is published, security authorities in Europe and America are concerned that Al-Qaeda is planning a major strike. 2 weeks ago, bin Laden issued a message on an audio cassette proving he was alive and raising fears it presaged new attacks. Again, like, there was an intimidation factor here about like, oh, he could strike anywhere, anyhow. The letter was initially, by the way, published not in like British media or press. It was originally published on Saudi Arabian websites, and from there, far-right extremists in the UK began translating the article from those Saudi Arabian websites and publishing them on websites in the UK. And those translated ones were published on websites that included stuff like how to build bombs and how to do it, how do it yourself biological weapons. Like, this is not like, oh, you know, this is such a principled stand Osama bin Laden is making here. It's insane. Hello, Obvious Alias and Charlie. How you guys doing? Hope you had a good time over on Binder's stream. So, without further ado, let's go over the text for Osama bin Laden's letter to America. Now, folks, just want to say, I feel like if you read this and you come out the other side being like, ah, yes, Osama bin Laden was based in good, you have something wrong in your heart. Or just a complete lack of, like, analytical skills. Hey, boiled peanuts. So here we go. And again, you can still find all of this published in The Guardian on the Wayback Machine. Like, it's not that hard to find it. But here we go. Full text, Bin Laden's letter to America, online document, the full text of Osama bin Laden's letter to the American people, reported in today's Observer. The letter first appeared on the internet in Arabic and has since been translated and circulated by Islamists in Britain. All right. In the name of Allah, the most gracious and most merciful. Permission to fight against disbelievers is given to those believers who are fought against because they have been wronged, and surely Allah is able to give them, believers, victory. Quran 22:39. Those who believe fight in the cause of Allah, and those who disbelieve fight in the cause of Tagut, anything worshipped by other than Allah, like Satan. So fight you against the friends of Satan. Ever feeble is indeed the plot of Satan. Quran 4:76. Some American writers have published articles under the title, On What Basis Are We Fighting? These articles have generated a number of responses, some of which adhered to the truth and were based on Islamic law, and others which have not. Here we wanted to outline the truth as an explanation and warning, hoping for Allah's reward, seeking success and support from Him. While seeking Allah's help, we form our reply based on 2 questions directed at all Americans. Question 1, why are we fighting and opposing you? Question 2, what are we calling you to, and what do we want from you? So I'm going to stop right there real quick and just point out, like, hey, if someone started off their manifesto letter after having killed thousands of people with multiple quotations from the Bible, and they were from an evangelical Christian background, I genuinely think most people on TikTok would be able to identify that that person was an insane terrorist who should not be, like, held up as like a, oh, they're really based. You know, this is pretty obvious to me, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, fundamentalist religious people are not talking about human beings and human lives in the context of bettering life for everyone. They're talking about converting people forcefully to their religion in order to glorify their God. That's their God is their priority, not anything else. You know, not your quality of life, not your ability to be, like, gay. Their priority is God, and they're willing to kill you over that. That's fundamentalists of every religious stripe, you know, whether Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, whatever. Like, that's how fundamentalist religion works. It's a completely different decision-making paradigm than what will make the most people happy, what will benefit the most people, etc. You know? So understand that already we are kind of veering into territory that absolutely differs in priority from where I think the vast majority of people on TikTok would actually be coming from. So question 1, why are we fighting and opposing you? As for the first question, why are we fighting and opposing you? The answer is very simple. 1, because you attacked us and continue to attack us. A, you attacked us in Palestine. Palestine, which has sunk under military occupation for more than 80 years. The British handed over Palestine, with your help and your support, to the Jews, who have occupied it for more than 50 years, years overflowing with oppression, tyranny, crimes, killing, expulsion, destruction, and devastation. The creation and continuation of Israel is one of the greatest crimes, and you are the leaders of its criminals. And of course, there is no need to explain and prove the degree of American support for Israel. The creation of Israel is a crime which must be erased. Each and every person whose hands have become polluted in the contribution towards this crime must pay its price and pay for it heavily. So, just as a note here, like certainly the creation of any state involves acts of violence. Like no state that has ever existed has been founded peacefully, you know? And with that being said, it should be immediately concerning, if you're reading this with a critical eye, it should be concerning that Jews and Israel are conflated here. Because that's something we're going to see more and more throughout the rest of this. Because it should be obvious, but Israel is a state. Jews are a group of people. Like, this should be fairly obvious. And yet, TikTokers will just clap along with this like seals, I guess. Because America bad. 2, it brings us both laughter and tears to see that you have not yet tired of repeating your fabricated lies, that the Jews have a historical right to Palestine, as it was promised to them in the Torah. Anyone who disputes with them on this alleged fact is accused of anti-Semitism. This is one of the most fallacious and widely circulated fabrications in history. The people of Palestine are pure Arabs and original Semites. It is the Muslims who are the inheritors of Moses, peace be upon him, and the inheritors of the real Torah that has not been changed. Muslims believe in all of the prophets, including Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon them all. If the followers of Moses have been promised a right to Palestine in the Torah, then the Muslims are the most worthy nation of this. And I should now pause here to point out that, again, if you are paying attention here, the argument here isn't that the fundamental argument that the Jews are making or that Israel is making is wrong. The fundamental argument that Osama bin Laden is making here is that, well, actually, God promised this land to Palestinians, who are pure Arabs and the real inheritors of biblical law, right? Like, so first of all, like, the conflation continues here between Jews and Israel, and second of all, Osama bin Laden is not taking a principled approach to this, like, well, in the name of like human rights, you're displacing Palestinians and ruining their lives. No, his position is God promised the Palestinians this land, not the Jews. Therefore, you are doing the wrong thing because you are going against God. Right? That's a deeply flawed argument because he's just using the same genocidal and the same rhetoric that leads to the genocidal actions Israel is doing against the Palestinians. He's just doing it in reverse. And with the same justification of, like, God gave us this land X amount of years ago. The argument here is bad, actually. When the Muslims conquered Palestine and drove out the Romans, Palestine and Jerusalem returned to
As
Islam.
someone WHO basically grew up with Muslims, I feel the need to say that this is not Islam. Osama bin Laden had better hope that there is no God.
Well, it is Islam in the same way that, like, fundamentalist Christians are still Christian, you know? Like, they aren't representative of most Christians. You know, like the Westboro Baptist Church that, like, shows up at funerals with, like, God hates fag signs. Like, they aren't representative of all Christians, but they are Christians, right? And the same way, Osama bin Laden is not representative of all Muslims at all. But he is still a Muslim. Like, so, like, it's the issue here is fundamentalist religion. I think it is fine to be a religious person, but religious people need to be on guard against these fundamentalist interpretations of their religious scripture, because it leads to a fanaticism that is simply divorced from logic. You can't argue with a religious fundamentalist, because their God told them how to be, and they just believe that. You know, like there's no argument you can make there. Yeah, and the same way Netanyahu is a fundamentalist religious Jew, he's not representative of the vast majority of Jewish people. Yeah, exactly, Malachi. Good way to kind of bring that full circle. Also, Kyrie, thank you for the 2 gifted tier 1 subs. When the Muslims conquered Palestine and drove out the Romans, Palestine and Jerusalem returned to Islam, the religion of all the prophets, peace be upon them. Therefore, the call to a historical right to Palestine cannot be raised against the Islamic Ummah that believes in all the prophets of Allah, peace and blessings be upon them, and we make no distinction between them. 3. The blood pouring out of Palestine must be equally revenged. You must know that Palestinians do not cry alone. Their women are not widowed alone. Their sons are not orphaned alone. Now, I have to tell you guys, and again, this builds on what we talked about before, Osama bin Laden's explicit plan was to get hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people across the Middle East killed by directly antagonizing the United States and provoking a violent response upon the Middle East. Like, his plan was quite literally to inflict so much suffering upon the Muslim world that the Muslim world would rally itself against the United States and against the Western world, and build its own Middle Eastern power bloc. So I need to point that out specifically because in this part of this letter, he's trying to make it sound like, oh, well, he really deeply cares about the suffering of Palestinians. About the, and like he goes on here, like I see this next part here about like being attacked in Somalia, the Muslims in Iraq, you know. He goes on to talk about all these places. He doesn't give a shit about those places because he has wider goals. His actual plan and belief system is that those people should suffer and be martyred in the cause of uniting the Muslim world. That's Osama bin Laden's ideology. His ideology of jihad embraced martyrdom. And that includes not just like people who voluntarily give up their lives for the wider cause, but people who against their will are killed and in the name of the wider cause. You know, like his plan involved getting innocent people killed to achieve his goals. This is why he explicitly called himself a terrorist. So, again, the pretense that he cares about these people insofar as like outside, like as he wants to convert them to his religious thinking, but that's all he cares about. He doesn't care about alleviating their suffering. He doesn't care about their suffering at all. He thinks their suffering is righteous and good, actually. And he thinks that because he's a religious fundamentalist. You attacked us in Somalia. You supported the Russian atrocities against us in Chechnya, the Indian oppression against us in Kashmir, the Jewish aggression against us in Lebanon. Again, note that again, India just has Indian oppression. It's not Hindu oppression. But Jewish and Israel are just one and the same to Osama bin Laden. Again, the conflation here, very interesting. Continue to note it. I'm sure it will come up again. Under your supervision, consent, and orders, the governments of our countries which act as your agents attack us on a daily basis. These governments prevent our people from establishing the Islamic Sharia, using violence and lies to do so. These governments, so again, the priority here is establishing the Islamic Sharia, establishing Sharia law. Like, that's part of what Osama bin Laden wanted to do, is impose religious law on people. That's part of his ideology and part of what he was hoping to achieve. These governments give us a taste of humiliation and place us in a large prison of fear and subdual. These governments steal our ummah's wealth and sell them to you at a paltry price. These governments have surrendered to the Jews and handed them most of Palestine, acknowledging the existence of their state over the dismembered limbs of their own people. Again, conflating Jews with Israel. The removal of these governments is an obligation upon us and a necessary step to free the Ummah, to make the Sharia the supreme law, and to regain Palestine. Note that when he says to make Sharia the supreme law, and I know that this might have gotten lost in like the past like 10 years or so, 20 years. Osama bin Laden wanted the world to be ruled under Islamic law. Like, dear people from TikTok, if you're still somehow watching this, like, this guy wanted to make you live under religious law. Like, if he had built his perfect world, it would have been a world predicated on Islamic law, not on, like, human rights and freedoms. And our fight against these governments is not separate from our fight against you. Fight. You steal our wealth and oil at paltry prices because of you, because of your international influence and military threats. There's a lot of typos in here. Dude should have used Microsoft Word 2013. I guess he needed to time travel 10 years. This theft is indeed the biggest theft ever witnessed by mankind in the history of the world. I think that there are probably bigger thefts of resources and like manpower. Like I don't know, just off the top of my head, like the indigenous people in the Americas, like the different African nations who got colonized. Just off the top of my head, I think there are a few more, right?
I was trying to write a funny message. This shit just sucks though, and I can't bring it in me to make fun. Theocracy is very bad, yo.
Yeah, like, that's the thing. I don't understand TikTokers reading this and being like, yes, Osama bin Laden is based. This is like reading a manifesto written by Marjorie Taylor Greene about how the world needs to be ruled under one law, God's law, and how the world is being influenced by Jewish by Jewishness in order to oppose God's law coming to fruition in every nation. Like, and being like, ah, yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene, actually very based. Yes, the Jewish space laser lady is very, very based and cool. She has some good ideas. She's wrong about a couple of things, but she's actually really right about America being bad. Like, it's insane. Like, it's actually insane. You like, if you just replaced like Osama bin Laden with like Charlie Kirk talking about the need for America to exert its Christian nationalist ideology across all the face of the earth, these people would recognize rightly that it's bad. But because it's Osama bin Laden, and they feel like there's some sort of conspiracy keeping them from finding out this information, even though it's readily available online, they are like, oh, well, this must be the truth. And like, folks from TikTok, if you do make it this far in the video, I respect that you want to question authority, but sometimes there's truth in like the authoritative takes on some things. Like, Osama bin Laden wasn't secretly a good dude, and you just live in a propaganda bubble that prevents you from seeing it. No, dude wanted to like take over the world with his fundamentalist religious view and impose it upon other people. And if you disagreed with him, he was perfectly fine like killing you. Like, that's so sometimes like that's not a lie. Like, the United States has lied or like downplayed a lot of things, but like Osama bin Laden being like an evil religious fundamentalist is not one of them. Yeah, and also like even if like he had like that's a very good point, Malachi. Even if he had like a pure goal of creating worldwide happiness and like, a wonderful utopia, but then he just like killed thousands of civilians, and I don't know that people would necessarily get behind that either. Like, I to kind of connect it to some of the other ideas we've been talking about, I've interacted with Nazis. Like, I've debated Nazis before on my channel, back in the old days, and they will tell you that they are Nazis because they believe that being a Nazi will make the world a better place. That their policies, I'm a white supremacist. If every race just had their own country, things would be much better. Everyone would be so much happier. Like, they believe that. But would that justify like a white nationalist like shooting up a black church? No, it wouldn't actually. Like, would it justify like the firebombing of like a predominantly black school to like instigate a race war because they thought that would make the world a better place? No, it wouldn't justify that. Yeah, it is unironically, Erica, like we're witnessing the unironic endgame of American diabolism, which is just everything America says is lies, and if America is telling you someone is bad, then they must actually be secretly good. It's the same kind of like ideological framework that leads people to be like, ah, yes, the U.S. government is trying to keep you from discovering the socialist paradise of North Korea. Like, it's literally the same thinking. Yeah, it's just exactly Person Merson. It is the inverse. It is the flip side, the dark side of American exceptionalism. You are just overcompensating for American exceptionalism by saying, ah, yes, well, America is exceptionally evil. Moving on. Your forces occupy our countries, you spread your military bases throughout them, you corrupt our lands, and you besiege our sanctities to protect the security of the Jews and to ensure the continuity of your pillage of our treasures. You have starved the Muslims in Iraq, where children die every day. It is a wonder that more than 1.5 million Iraqi children have died as a result of your sanctions, and you did not show concern. Yet when 3,000 of your people died, the entire world rises and has not yet sat down. Yeah. This is largely a result of a couple of things. One, the goal of the United States was not to kill 1.5 million children with sanctions. That wasn't the goal. I believe that at this point in 2002, the reason there were sanctions against Iraq was because Al-Qaeda had a lot of financial and military ties with the Taliban in Iraq at this point, and so Iraq was sanctioned as a result of that. I could be wrong about that. I should probably look that up real quick. 2002 Iraq sanctions. It's the one thing I don't know offhand. Do. Oh, yeah. Iraq was sanctioned after its invasion of Kuwait by the UN, and it stayed in place until 2003, which is when Saddam was ousted from power. Yeah, and the purpose of the sanctions was to compel Iraq to withdraw from Kuwait, pay reparations, and to disclose and eliminate any weapons of mass destruction. So yeah, again, the United States continued the charade that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction far beyond 2003. But yeah, those sanctions were probably in place a lot longer than they should have been, and that is definitely on us. Osama's letter is like even more blatantly anti-Semitic than that Tucker on X video you were watching a while ago. Really don't know how these TikTok people read it and are like, yeah, you know what? Fuck it. I was wrong about this dude. He was really cool. Yeah, like fuck it. I'd get a beer with Osama. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Do. Well, Sherlock Smoog, that's why I looked it up, because I wasn't sure if what I was saying was true. I looked it up and corrected myself. Boop ba doop boop ba doop boom. Just one more thing. The only comment I feel like I can add is that I hate it here sometimes. Same. Bow. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Do. Sorry, my brain got stun locked. I had to look up more about the sanctions. But yeah, no, the sanctions were like extended from like the end of the 90s into like the early 2000s and ended with the fall of Saddam Hussein, and were largely predicated on the United States not believing the claims about having dismantled their weapons of mass destruction. And yeah, that is what the sanctions were about. Again, not about the Taliban. My bad. And yes, it's fine. Vosh's brain stun lock for like 30 minutes usually. Yeah, no, I had to like silently work through my thoughts on that one. Autism brain allows me to talk very, very easily, but sometimes when I need to like slow my roll and like check myself, then I need to just like recalibrate my brain. But I did it. Success. We did it, baby. Okay. So 1.5 million Iraqi children have died as a result of your sanctions. You did not show concern. Yet when 3,000 of your people died, the entire world rises and has not yet sat down. Well, part of that is because, again, the United States has a known defensive pact called NATO. And when it is attacked, and then NATO convenes and decides, yeah, that country or a significant military presence in said country attacked us, you have the go-ahead for retaliation war. Well, then the coalition of NATO like rolls out and attacks. That's how a defensive alliance works. That's actually what Osama bin Laden was banking on to provoke a retaliatory attack on Afghanistan. Like that's that was literally the mechanism on which he banked 9/11 on. Okay. You have supported the Jews in their idea that Jerusalem is their eternal capital and agreed to move your embassy there. I don't think this was true in 2002 when this was published. This was done under Donald Trump in like 2017. But both of these things were done in 2017. With your help and under your protection, the Israelis are planning to destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque. Again, Al-Aqsa Mosque still stands. It's 2023. Under the protection of your weapons, Sharon, I believe Ariel Sharon, an Israeli general, entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque to pollute it as a preparation to capture and destroy it. Again, I need to really emphasize here, Al-Aqsa Mosque still exists and is not captured or destroyed. I mean, it's captured in the same sense that like all Palestinian land is currently occupied, but like it's not captured in the sense that Osama bin Laden was alleging it would shortly be. And also, again, the claim Ariel Sharon polluted the Al-Aqsa Mosque is literally just a prominent Jewish person went inside of it. That to Osama bin Laden, that was pollution enough. 2. These tragedies and calamities are only a few examples of your oppression and aggression against us. It is commanded by our religion and intellect that, and notice how, again, it is commanded by our religion is primary here, that the oppressed have a right to return the aggression. Do not await anything from us but jihad, resistance, and revenge. Is it in any way rational to expect that after America has attacked us for more than half a century, that we will then leave her to live in security and peace? Question mark, exclamation point, exclamation point. You may then dispute that all of the above does not justify aggression against civilians for crimes they did not commit and offenses in which they did not partake. This argument contradicts your continuous repetition that America is the land of freedom, that its leaders and its leaders in this world. Therefore, the American people are the ones who choose their government by way of their own free will, a choice which stems from their agreement to its policies. Thus, the American people have chosen, consented to, and affirmed their support for the Israeli oppression of the Palestinians, the occupation and usurpation of their land, and its continuous killing, torture, punishment, and expulsion of the Palestinians. The American people have the ability and choice to refuse the policies of their government and even to change it if they want. Just to really emphasize here, he's making an argument against... He's making an argument against, or in favor of, killing civilians. That his argument here is to justify violence against the TikTokers who are saying he's so cool and based. On top of this, to really hammer this home, how heinous this is, this justification in particular, this is the same justification that the Israeli government is currently using to justify killing civilians, Palestinian civilians. You know, the Israeli government has spokespeople going out saying, well, they voted for Hamas in 2006. You know, they could have, if they didn't want this, they shouldn't have voted for Hamas. Like, the argument here is just the same shitty argument. Like, it is, it's actually shocking to me. Like, you would think these TikTokers, which, whom I'm assuming, by the way, are supportive of Osama bin Laden, and I'm making this as charitably as I can. I assume that they are supportive of Osama bin Laden because he is, you know, at least in a surface way, on a surface level, offering support to Palestinian people and talking about their oppression. Right? But they aren't, but these people aren't actually applying any comprehensive media analysis to what is being said or why the speaker is making these arguments, what his perspective is. I feel like this is the fatal misstep of a lot of these TikTokers. Essentially what they're doing is they're sitting back and saying, he just like me for real. You know, not on purpose, mind you, but like that's what they're subconsciously doing. Like, they don't read any intention onto Osama bin Laden aside from him being a mirror for their own beliefs. They think, oh, you know, Osama bin Laden's just like me. He has the same ideology as I do. You know, if he was at the local dive bar with me, we'd get along just fine. And it's just like, nah, he would kill everyone in that bar for drinking beer. Like, what? Like, this would not be. He has an entirely different decision-making paradigm. He has an entirely different set of priorities and beliefs that they are just not accounting for when they read through this. They're just going, he just like me for real. He just like me for real. Yeah, America bad. America bad. Yeah. Let's see. The American people are the ones who pay the taxes which fund the planes that bomb us in Afghanistan. By the way, sorry, just one more thing. One more thing to note here. It is funny to me that Osama bin Laden in this document actually offers like a more hopeful political analysis than many people on the left in America hold for their ability to impact elections. Right? Like, Osama bin Laden's like, well, you guys have a democracy. You guys could just influence the outcome of elections by getting involved in your electoral process. And, like, the same people who are like, yes, Osama bin Laden is so based and right about about everything, are also usually the same ones who are going like, there's no point getting involved in politics. It's all a machine twisted by the man. And capitalism. And it's just like, bro. God damn it. In Iraq, was the U.S. trained Osama bin Laden and supplied him with weapons as part of the 1980s counterinsurgency in the Middle East? Yeah. True. By the way, I don't actually believe, like, anything that he's saying is an honest analysis from Osama bin Laden. I just think it's somewhat funny on a surface level. Moving on. The American people are the ones who pay the taxes which fund the planes that bomb us in Afghanistan, the tanks that strike and destroy our homes in Palestine, the armies which occupy our lands in the Arabian Gulf, and the fleets which ensure the blockade of Iraq. These tax dollars are given to Israel for it to continue to attack us and penetrate our lands. So the American people are the ones who fund the attacks against us, and they are the ones who oversee the expenditure of these monies in the way they wish, through their elected candidates. Also, the American army is part of the American people. It is this very same people who are shamelessly helping the Jews fight against us. Again, Jews. He makes no distinction between Israel as a state, as a governmental entity, and Jewish people at large. He views all Jewish people as agents of Israel. The American people are the ones who employ both their men and their women in the American forces which attack us. This is why the American people cannot be not innocent of all the crimes committed. The double negative here is throwing me for a loop, chat. I'm sorry. I feel like a robot sometimes when I read a double negative where my brain will just short circuit. This is why the American people cannot be not innocent. Is this an unintentionally saying the American people are innocent of all the crimes committed by the Americans and Jews against us? Also, like, again, just Jews. It's again, it's not just like, if you are reading this as somebody who is like just subject to American diabolism, why are you not questioning the constant conflation of Jews and Israel? How do you read this and not be like, wait, the crimes committed by the Americans and Jews? Like, wait, like, how does part of your brain not just stop and be like, wait a minute. Allah the Almighty legislated the permission and the option to take revenge. Thus, if we are attacked, then we have the right to attack back. Whoever has destroyed our villages and towns, then we have a right to destroy their villages and towns. Whoever has stolen our wealth, then we have the right to destroy their economy. And whoever has killed our civilians, we have the right to kill theirs. The American government and press still refuses to answer the question, why did they attack us in New York and Washington? If Sharon is a man of peace in the eyes of Bush, then we are also men of peace! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. America does not understand the language of manners and principles, so we are addressing it using the language it understands. Question 2. As for the second question that we want to answer, what are we calling you to, and what do we want from you? First thing that we were calling you to is Islam. Again, Osama bin Laden wasn't a based humanitarian who cared for the welfare of all people. He's a religious fundamentalist. The very first thing he wants from you is to convert or die. Like, that is what he wants from you. Like, what? It's not that hard to figure out. He's pretty straightforward about him being a religious fundamentalist. The religion of the unification of God, of freedom from associating partners with him, and rejection of this, of complete love of him, the exalted, of complete submission to his laws, and of the discarding of all the opinions, orders, theories, and religions which contradict with the religion he sent down with his prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Islam is the religion of all the prophets and makes no distinction between them, peace be upon them all. It is to this religion that we call you, the seal of all the previous religions. It is the religion of the unification of God, sincerity, the best of manners, righteousness, mercy, honor, purity, and piety. It is the religion of showing kindness to others, establishing justice between them, granting them their rights, and defending the oppressed and the persecuted. It is the religion of enjoining the good and forbidding the evil with the hand, tongue, and heart. It is the religion of jihad in the way of Allah, so that Allah's word and the religion reign supreme. It is the religion of unity and agreement on the obedience to Allah, the total equality between all people without regard to their color, sex, or language. Yeah, which is why the country that Osama bin Laden was from, he's literally related to one of the wealthiest families in the world in Saudi Arabia, a place that didn't allow women to drive because they weren't responsible enough to drive without like a male escort who was capable of driving for them. The total equality of the sexes right there. Like he's his family is literally like one of the most powerful families in Saudi Arabia. Like they are intimately connected with the Saudi royal family. Just absolutely wild that these people are putting him up as like an example. Yeah, but by the way, this is like in the middle of like again, like a white supremacist shooter's manifesto, where like, they open up with some Bible verses and then they talk about, actually those Mexicans are real terrible, and they like list out a bunch of reasons about how Mexican immigrants are like invading over the border and like taking the gerbs and all that stuff. And then midway through, they're like, what am I asking for the United States to do? I'm asking for it to convert to Christianity, the religion of all that is good and holy in this world. Like it's literally like, if you just flip the religious aspect of this and brought it into an American context, every single one of these TikTokers would be able to understand that it is deeply fucked. And yet it's still going viral. It's insane. A question has been raised in recent times concerning whether a community assured a safe haven after experiencing a horrific genocide of the kind that occurred in World War II could in turn lead that community to adopt similar tactics to defend that safe haven through subconscious lived experience. I don't think that is like, I don't think that's inevitable. I think that is always a possibility, but like in the same way that any given group of people could come to those same conclusions, right? Any given group of people can come to fascistic governance or ideas that would lead them to do genocides against like outside groups. I don't think it's unique to people who have survived genocides. Let me put it that way. Yeah, that like in it. Yeah, exactly. Person. Yeah. It is the religion whose book, the Quran, will remain preserved and unchanged, and the other divine books and messages have been changed. The Quran is the miracle till the day of judgment. Allah has challenged anyone to bring a book like the Quran or even 10 verses like it. 2, the second thing we call you to do is to stop your oppression, lies, immorality, and debauchery that is spread among you. We call you to be a people of manners, principles, honor, and purity, to reject the immoral acts of fornication, homosexuality, intoxicants, gamblings, and trading with interest. So just, I'm going to stop you guys right there. People of TikTok, you, Gen Zers, you guys read Osama bin Laden calling you all to stop all acts, all sex acts, and to stop being gay and trans, and to stop like drinking alcohol or smoking weed, and also using any bank. And you were just like, ah, yes, this guy is based and good. What a good moral compass this guy has. Yeah, honestly, Freyline, my question is the same. I don't know that these people actually read Osama bin Laden's letter to America. Like, I don't think you guys actually did that, because I've seen a lot of you guys on TikTok with your, like, unveiled heads talking about how based Osama bin Laden was. And, like, I don't know. You guys all seem to be violating the precepts of his perfect ideal world here. God. Yeah, the gayest generation in America somehow read a manifesto from someone who literally would kill them all if given an opportunity, and we're like, yes, he's actually a good terrorist. He's actually good. You know, and I do have to say, like, it is not at all equivalent to, like, the arguments of, like, oh, you're in favor of Palestinians, but, you know, a lot of Palestinians are bigots. Yeah, but, like, I don't think people being bigoted is like a justification for killing them. Like, I don't think you reach, like, oh, you reached the 70% bigot threshold, time to mass murder you. I don't think that's how the world should work, actually. I think that's actually a really bad argument for mass murder. I think there's a difference between that position and simultaneously also looking at, like, a terrorist's manifesto where he calls on people to stop being gay and being like, hey, maybe this guy doesn't have the best ideas about life. You know, this is just me not agreeing with a bigoted terrorist. And I think that's okay, actually. I think that's actually kind of okay. We call you to all of this, that you may be freed from that which you have been caught up in, that you may be freed from the deceptive lies that you are a great nation, that your leaders spread amongst you, to conceal from you the despicable state to which you have reached. By the way, just again, remember earlier when I said, like, white nationalists believe that they are making a better world? Osama bin Laden believes that a better world would be achieved if everyone was just beholden to his particular brand of Islam. Like, that's what he believes. He believes that would make it a better world. And the question you have to ask yourself is whether you agree that his, anti-gay, anti-alcohol slash weed, anti-gambling, anti-compound interest, sex world would actually be like a one worth living in and one worth killing for. Because his argument here is that that is a world worth killing for, and if you want to be gay, it is worth killing you in order to achieve that world. Right? And Pluvius, you are. So, like, just to be aware, he believes that he's making a better world with these violent attacks, with precipitating acts that killed directly thousands and indirectly killed millions. So, yeah. It is saddening to tell you that you are the worst civilization witnessed by the history of mankind. You are the nation who, rather than ruling by the Sharia of Allah in its constitution and laws, again, this is the number one reason he is criticizing the United States, okay? It's not because of any of the other things. The number one reason the United States is the worst country on earth is because we are not ruled by Sharia law. That's his argument. And if you were a TikToker and you fell for this, like, do some goddamn introspection. Rather than ruling by the Sharia of Allah in its constitution and laws, choose to invent your own laws as you will and desire. You separate by the way, this is just called democracy. This is just called democratic legislation. Like, when you vote for a politician to come into power, like your politician, their job is to make laws to benefit you. The criticism here is against democracy itself. You separate religion from your policies. Yeah, how dare America not be a theocracy? How dare America not be an explicit theocracy? Contradicting the pure nature which affirms absolute authority to the Lord and your Creator. Again, if you are from TikTok, I need you to, in the comments of this segment, when it goes up on YouTube, I need you to comment to me how you read this and you're like, yeah, Osama bin Laden was actually pretty base. This is really challenging my worldview. Dude's arguing for a theocracy and against democracy itself. And he was pretty based, actually. Yeah, separation of church and state is actually incredibly based and important so that our country doesn't fall to extremist bigots. You flee from the embarrassing question posed to you. How is it possible for Allah the Almighty to create his creation, grant them power over all the creatures and land, grant them all the amenities of life, and then deny them that which they are most in need of, knowledge of the laws which govern their lives? 2. You are the nation which permits usury, which has been forbidden by all the religions. So, just in case you guys don't know what usury is just charging interest on loans. So essentially, this kind of goes back to, like, medieval times, but the entire institution of banking was made possible because Jewish people are allowed under the Torah to charge interest, whereas Christians and Muslims are not. And so Jewish people were put in charge of banks so that they could, run banking institutions that would actually function. Over time, there's been created a parallel system of banking called Islamic banking, which is essentially banking done in accordance of Sharia with Sharia law, and it's very complicated. But essentially, it just finds loopholes to essentially do the same thing. Like, instead of giving you a loan that has interest, the bank will buy a property and then you will slowly buy it at a markup. That's essentially kind of like the difference of how it works. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird as hell. But yeah, when we're talking about like Islamic finance, also very complicated, very prevalent in the Middle East, but also important to note, large countries like Saudi Arabia also do invest in banks and like Western style banks and have like do business in banks like that and with banks like that. Like, this is, but yes, no, yes, the crime of usury, somehow unique to America. God. Welcome, President Sunday Raiders. How you doing? We're going over Osama bin Laden's letter to America and the TikTok propaganda around it. Yet you build your economy and investments on usury. As a result of this, in all its different forms and guises, the Jews have taken control of your economy, through which they have taken control of your media, and now control all aspects of your life, making you their servants and achieving their aims at your expense, precisely what Benjamin Franklin warned you against. What? Okay, I'm gonna circle back around to that while my brain tries to figure out exactly what that means. But yeah, again, if you're a TikToker who says that you read Letter to America and Osama bin Laden was secretly right all along, and you're really sad that he's dead now because of how right he was about everything, and you got to this part and you're like, ah, yes, the Jews have taken control of the economy and the media and now control all aspects of your lives. This is unironically the Jewish question. This is like one of the fundamental aspects of Nazism that is just in Letter to America. Like, Osama bin Laden, religious fundamentalist terrorist who also believed in Nazi shit. Like, I don't, you guys got through all of this and you didn't, you read this part and you were just like, you didn't like blink a little bit extra and like think about that for another second. Bin Laden is a Ben Franklin stan. I mean, I know Ben Franklin was like ridiculously racist, but I've never read anything about Ben Franklin's position on Jews. It's the Jewish question. Sorry. Yeah. Like, I know that like Benjamin Franklin wrote about how like the swarthy Germans shouldn't be allowed to live in America because it should only be for like the pure Anglo-Saxons, and like the Norwegians and the Swedes were too non-Anglo-Saxon to live in America either. Like, Benjamin Franklin was ridiculously racist. But I guess I'll just Google Benjamin Franklin Jews. Oh, number one result, the Franklin. I'm going to throw this on screen. The Franklin prophecy. I've never heard this before. Sometimes called the Franklin forgery. Okay. Well, I think we're getting closer to something. Is an anti-Semitic speech falsely attributed to Benjamin Franklin, warning of the supposed dangers of admitting Jews to the nascent United States. The speech was purportedly transcribed by Charles Cotesworth Pinckney during the Constitutional Convention of 1787, but was unknown before its appearance in 1934 in the pages of William Dudley Pelley's Silver Legion pro-Nazi magazine Liberation. No evidence exists for the document's authenticity, and some of Pelley's claims have actively been disproven. Damn, that's crazy, dog. That's damn. It's so TikTokers, you again just blindly read through Letter to America, got to this paragraph where Osama bin Laden talks about how the Jews run all the banks, run all of the media, and run your entire lives, and then casually mentioned something that is literally only mentioned in a neo-Nazi magazine. And you were like, yes, that this man seems based and good. Everything I know about the world is wrong. You fucking marks. You absolute like you rubes. Like you would, again, I said this at the beginning about one guy. You guys would just like buy you'd buy a handbag from like a random guy on the street and go around believing it's a real Gucci bag. Yeah, I guess not even neo-Nazis. Like if it's written in 1934, it's just actually written by Nazis. God damn, dude. Yeah, a proto-neo-Nazi. God damn it, you guys dragging me. Not that, Marx. All right. Anyway, you are a nation that permits the production, trading, and usage of intoxicants. You also permit drugs and only forbid the trade of them, even though your nation is the largest consumer of them. Yeah, again, right here, he's talking about alcohol. He's talking about the fact that in the United States, you are allowed to drink alcohol. You're allowed to have beer or a whiskey. You guys read that and were like, oh yeah, fucking based, dude. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Hey, guys, remember when the United States tried to ban alcohol? Do you guys remember how well that went? How it definitely didn't lead to the rise of organized crime? Do you remember how well all of that went? Me neither. You are a nation that permits acts of immorality, and you consider them to be pillars of personal freedom. You've continued to sink down this abyss from level to level until incest has spread amongst you, in the face of which neither your sense nor honor nor your laws object. I believe it is illegal to have incestual relations in the United States. Okay, in all but 2 states, it's illegal to have incest between consenting adults. So I guess those 2 states, y'all sussy as fuck. I'm not looking it up because I don't care enough to tell you which 2 states it is. But I will look up. Just out of curiosity. Wow. I typed in country with highest rate of incest. South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Pakistan, and Nigeria. I wonder where Osama bin Laden was from. I wonder where he might have been from. Seems like the high ground was actually the low ground, Anakin. I think you might not be onto something there, Osama. God damn it. I hate that I had to even look that up. Anyway, moving on. Who can forget your President Clinton's immoral acts committed in the Oval Office? After that, you did not even bring him to account other than he made a mistake, after which everything passed with no punishment. Is there a worse kind of event for which your name will go down in history, remembered by nations? You know, now it being like 20 years after this letter is published, I don't think if you asked most people in the world what the United States is known for, 0% of them would answer Bill Clinton getting his dick sucked in the Oval Office. 0% of them would actually say that. Dude, like, Osama bin Laden in this letter is justifying killing thousands of people on 9/11, and his justification for the debauchery of the United States is your president got your dick sucked. In like the list of things even Americans who know about the United States would list, Bill Clinton getting his dick sucked is like, I don't know. I don't think it even cracks like the top 1,000. I don't even think it cracks the top 1,000, maybe even not the top 5,000 things America has done wrong. God. You are a nation that permits gambling in all its forms. Well, this is just not true, by the way. There are plenty of laws and regulations on gambling. The companies practice this as well, resulting in the investments becoming active and the criminals becoming rich. Unless you're Donald Trump, in which case you defy the odds and lose while running your own casino. You are a nation that exploits women like consumer products or advertising tools, calling upon customers to purchase them. You use women to serve passengers, visitors, and strangers to increase your profit margins. You then rant that you support the liberation of women. Again, under his worldview, women wouldn't be allowed to drive cars because they're not responsible enough. In his worldview, it would be in the world he would create, it would be a crime for a woman to be unchaperoned.
Marks was my spirit animal. Please enjoy this BWA.
Paladin, thank you for the $50 dono. I very much appreciate it. It like your subs and donos literally keep me alive and allow me to keep making this content. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Big BWA energy. But like again, in Osama bin Laden's worldview, like women, like you think Osama bin Laden supported the liberation of women? For real? Like, I mean, you can look at how like, I mean, just goddamn. When did Saudi Arabia? Yeah, literally, Saudi Arabia didn't allow women to drive cars until 2018, 5 years ago. It took until 15 years after this letter was published for women to be able to drive cars in the country Osama bin Laden was from. Like, have traffic accidents increased? I don't believe so. I just Man, dude, I feel like my brain is just overflowing with different examples about how not in support of women's liberation Osama bin Laden is. But the other part of my brain is just being like, no, this is like just patently obvious. You don't need to continue to go into it. So I'm going to resist the urge to just derail myself for like 30 minutes talking about how not into women's liberation, like Osama bin Laden's fundamentalist religious worldview was. Okay? God. Also, just as an FYI, Saudi Arabia also like used women in advertising. They just dressed in accordance with Sharia law. Anyway, you are a nation that practices the trade of sex in all its forms, directly and indirectly. Giant corporations and establishments are established on this under the name of art, entertainment, tourism, and freedom, and other deceptive names you attribute to it. So again, literally, in Osama bin Laden's world, I would be arrested for just having cleavage on this platform, and probably also just for being a trans person. Let's be real. Sex scenes in movies banned. God, what a timeline we're in, right? And because of all this, you've been described in history as a nation that spreads diseases that were unknown to man in the past. Go ahead and boast to the nations of man that you brought them AIDS as a satanic American invention. Again, I do have to pause and ask TikTokers, you read that America invented AIDS? And that it is a satanic American invention? And you just nodded along and said, ah, yes. What a based and good man. He knows his history. He really, I should really just believe everything he says. More evidence they didn't read it. Either they didn't read it or a lot more of them are monsters than I would have thought. Yeah, it's common knowledge. America invented AIDS to, I guess, I guess infect the world. Again, to break down kind of what he's saying here is, it doesn't have to make sense because his argument is entirely religious based, like religiously based. He believes that essentially because America is so sexually promiscuous in violation of the will of Allah, that AIDS was concocted due to the promiscuity of Americans, due to the hedonism of Americans, due to the homosexuality and transness of Americans. That's what he's arguing here, and that as a result of this decadence gone awry, AIDS has now spread to other nations across the planet, and the United States and its evil is to blame. You know, it doesn't have to make scientific sense or historical sense because he's operating with a different paradigm for how he views the world, which is through a religious perspective. Yeah, it's essentially alt-fact, like evangelical preachers like Pat Robertson, just repackaged for a Muslim fundamentalist perspective, you know? That's what he's doing. And the fact that TikTokers are falling for it is directly attributable to the fact that they're willing to extend him a lot more charity than to a crazed evangelical preacher who's talking about how God sent Hurricane Katrina to kill people in Louisiana because of, gay people being able to marry or something, you know? You have destroyed nature with your industrial waste and gases more than any other nation in history. Despite this, you refuse to sign the Kyoto Agreement so that you can secure the profit of your greedy companies and industries. Your law is the law of the rich and wealthy people who hold sway in their political parties and fund their election campaigns with their gifts. Behind them stand the Jews who control your policies, media, and economy. And I do want to point out here that again, strangely, oddly enough, the letter of fundamentalist religious zealot who's willing to kill civilians seems to have logical inconsistencies, where earlier in the letter he talked about the agency of the American people and how their complicity with American foreign policy makes them valid targets for terrorism, and yet here we are later in the letter, and he's talking about how actually the Jews are controlling everything, even American policy. So would that not contradict his earlier statement about, civilians being fine targets? I mean, if Jews are secretly the ones controlling all of this, it's almost like consistency doesn't matter as long as he's able to insert the anti-Semitism. As long as he's able to insert the anti-Semitism and his religious dogma, he is completely and utterly fine to be inconsistent, because again, he's operating from a point of religious thinking. It doesn't matter if it's not logical. It doesn't matter if there are contradictions, because, well, through Allah, all things are possible. Almost like he's completely full of shit. Yeah, almost like he's a completely full of shit religious zealot. Yeah, almost. That which you are singled out for in the history of mankind is that you have used force to destroy mankind more than any other nation in history, not to defend principles and values, but to hasten to secure your interests and profits. Again, I would argue every nation in history has used force to secure their interests and profits where they've been able to. Like that is just a nature of state. Like, states generally aren't defending principles and values. They use those buzzwords as propaganda tools, but primarily they are motivated by material interests. You who dropped a nuclear bomb on Japan, even though Japan was ready to negotiate an end to the war, how many acts of oppression, tyranny, and injustice have you carried out, O callers to freedom? Let us not forget one of your major characteristics, your duality in both manners and values, your hypocrisy in manners and principles. All manners, principles, and values have two scales, one for you and one for others. The freedom and democracy that you call to is for yourselves and for white race only. As for the rest of the world, you impose upon them your monstrous, destructive policies and governments. I do also have to point out that earlier in this same letter, he pointed out that the Palestinians have a right to their land in part because they are pure-blooded Arabs. So just to, I don't know. I don't know that this guy has an inherent opposition to racially linking land and people and with rights. I don't know. Just throwing that one out there. You impose upon them your monstrous, destructive policies and governments, which you call the American Friends. I don't know what that means. Yet you prevent them from establishing democracies. When the Islamic Party in Algeria wanted to practice democracy and they won the election, you unleashed your agents in the Algerian army onto them and to attack them with tanks and guns, to imprison them and torture them. A new lesson from the American Book of Democracy! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I don't know anything about this. Let me look this up real quick. Algeria. Do 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 do. Oh. The platform of this political party was literally to abolish democracy and establish an Islamic state ruled by Sharia law. I'm shocked. It's 1990. The party, again, Islamic Salvation Front in Algeria. In its 1990 electoral victory, giving it control of many local governments, led to the imposing of the veil on female municipal employees, meaning they had to be veiled at all times, pressuring of liquor stores, largely to close them, video shops and other establishments perceived as un-Islamic to close, and segregation of bathing areas by gender. Yes, definitely all positive things. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Let's see, in May 1991, they called for a general strike to protest the government redrawing electoral districts. While the general strike was a failure, it did lead to mass demonstrations. Disagreements on the strike provoked open dissension among the FIS leadership, and prolonged demonstrations alarmed the military. Okay, so from what I'm reading here, essentially the army did a military coup. This doesn't seem to have anything to do with the US's agents. Like there was a schism between the military in Algeria and a rising Islamist party in the country. And then the military just suspended the electoral process and did a coup. And then it turned into a civil war, which led to the founding of the Islamic Salvation Army. And that continued until 2003. 1997, when a unilateral ceasefire was assigned. Yeah, anyway, this is a whole mess. I'm not going to go into this right now. Beep boop. Yes, Rock Oka, the 1979 Iranian revolution would have been a much, much better example. But that's not the example he gave. He gave the example of Algeria. And again, the Iranian Revolution was largely predicated after the United States overthrew the democratically elected government of Iran. Yeah, no, basically the United States like overthrew the democratically elected leadership in Iran, installed the Shah, essentially, a monarchy, and then there was a revolution against the Shah, which replaced the Shah with, essentially a theocracy. True, Ert. We kind of fucked up Iran ourselves. That's on us. Thanks, Nicholas Chevelis. I appreciate it. Thanks for saying hi. All right, moving on. We have got a lot more of this to cover. I don't know enough about Algeria to mention this, but I do just want to note that, like, the Islamic Party in Algeria wanted to establish a theocracy. So I don't know. Again, if if Algeria had actually been able to establish a democracy, Osama bin Laden would oppose it. Because again, as he said earlier, he thinks that being able to democratically make your own laws is actually counter to Allah's will. So, I don't think he would be particularly happy with a democracy in Algeria anyway. Your policy on prohibiting and forcibly removing weapons of mass destruction to ensure world peace only applies to those countries which you do not permit to possess such weapons. As for the countries you consent to, such as Israel, then they are allowed to keep and use such weapons to defend their security. Anyone who you suspect might be manufacturing or keeping these kinds of weapons, you call them criminals, and you take military action against them. I think I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I agree with restricting the proliferation of nuclear weapons. I think that is inherently a good thing. Though in the long term, probably a losing battle. But I think delaying everyone having nukes is probably a good thing. You're the last ones to respect the resolutions and policies of international law, yet you claim to want to selectively punish anyone else who does the same. Israel has, for more than 50 years, been pushing UN resolutions and rules against the wall with the full support of America. This is true. The broken clock is right. Yeah. And again, that's not the bedrock of Osama bin Laden's letter here. It's just one kind of offhanded thing that he is correct about. He has a correct assessment of this, but his proposed solution is insane. It's insane and fueled by religious fanaticism and, frankly, as we've seen now on multiple occasions, Nazism. Like, there are elements of Nazi rhetoric riddled throughout his worldview. As for the war criminals which you censure and form criminal courts for, you shamelessly ask that your own are granted immunity. However, history will not forget the war crimes that you committed against the Muslims and the rest of the world. Those you've killed in Japan, Afghanistan, Somalia, Lebanon, and Iraq will remain a shame that you will never be able to escape. I do have to say, maybe Japan, Japan did some pretty heinous shit in World War II. Granted, like, the fire bombings and nukings of Japan, probably not defensible. Probably really horrible. Definitely horrible and indefensible. But, like, also World War II. Everything was horrible and indefensible. And again, like, Osama bin Laden's actually fine with Muslims in Afghanistan, Lebanon, and Iraq, and Somalia suffering and dying. So, again, this statement is not coming out of a place of concern for those people. It's coming out of a place of trying to use their deaths for propagandistic purposes. It will suffice to remind you that your latest war crimes in Afghanistan, in which densely populated innocent civilian villages were destroyed, bombs were dropped on mosques, causing the roof of the mosque to come crashing down on the heads of the Muslims praying inside. You're the ones who broke the agreement with the Mujahideen when they left Kunduz, bombing them in Jangi Fort and killing more than 1,000 of your prisoners through suffocation and thirst. Allah alone knows how many people have died by torture at the hands of you and your agents. Your planes remain in the Afghan skies, looking for anyone remotely suspicious. You have claimed to be the vanguards of human rights, and your Ministry of Foreign Affairs issues annual reports containing statistics of those countries that violate any human rights. However, all these things vanished when the Mujahideen hit you, and you then implemented the methods of the same documented governments that you used to curse. In America, you captured thousands of Muslims and Arabs and took them into custody with neither reason, court trial, nor even disclosing their names. You issued newer, harsher laws. What happens in Guantanamo is a historical embarrassment to America and its values, and it screams into your faces, you hypocrites. What is the value of your signature on any agreement or treaty? Now, this is true. What happens in Guantanamo is a historical embarrassment to America. The broken clock. Correct. However, you can find people who aren't Osama bin Laden, the guy who masterminded 9/11, to tell you that. Like, you can find people who aren't responsible for thousands of people's deaths who can tell you that Guantanamo Bay is bad. John, you know who hasn't killed thousands of people and has condemned Guantanamo Bay? Jon Stewart. Lefty TikTok, you should really watch more Daily Show with Jon Stewart. He was pretty based and right about a lot of things. Except for his old takes on trans people, which he has now corrected. So, I don't know, maybe consider supporting not a horrific monster who deliberately planned not only to directly kill, again, thousands of people, but also indirectly planned to kill millions more. But have you considered America bad? I have, and it's not a good argument. What would you call, what we call you to, thirdly, is to take an honest stance with yourselves, and I doubt you will do so, to discover that you are a nation without principles or manners, and that the values and principles to which that the values and principles to you are something which you merely demand from others, not which you yourself must adhere to. We also advise you to stop supporting Israel and to end your support for the Indians in Kashmir, the Russians against the Chechens, and also to cease supporting the Manila government against the Muslims in the southern Philippines. We also advise you to pack your luggage and get out of our lands. Pack your luggage and get out, boys. We desire for your goodness, guidance, and righteousness, so do not force us to send you back as cargo in coffins. Sixthly, we call upon you to end your support for the corrupt leaders in our countries. Do not interfere in our politics and method of education. Leave us alone, or expect us in New York and Washington. Yes, what a based guy. Threatening to blow up sites in New York and Washington again. What a base dude. He's not. TikTok, folks, if you've gotten this far in my video, I hope you've cottoned on to the fact that Osama bin Laden wasn't based and wasn't a good man. We also call you to deal with us and interact with us on the basis of mutual interests and benefits, rather than the policies of subdual theft and occupation, and not to continue your policy of supporting the Jews, because this will result in more disasters for you. Again, just, I know I pointed it out a lot earlier, but the conflation of Jews with Israel is real gross and disgusting. It's unironic, blatant, in-your-face anti-Semitism. I can't emphasize enough. Yeah, I don't understand how you read this and you come to the conclusion that he's a base dude when he's literally a theocratic fascist. Like, this guy is basically if Matt Walsh planned a terror attack against a foreign country. You know, like, I just, man. But I want to uncritically hate something. Too bad. We live in a complicated world. If you fail to respond to all these conditions, then prepare to fight with the Islamic nation, the nation of And again, when he says the Islamic nation, he's talking about the hypothetical nation that he will hopefully forge out of the by using the United States and the West as like a brutal, bloody catalyst to turn all of the nations of the Middle East into the Islamic nation. The nation of monotheism that puts complete trust on Allah and fears none other than Him. The nation which is addressed by its Quran with the words, "Do you fear them? Allah has more right that you should fear Him if you are believers. Fight against them so that Allah will punish them by your hands and disgrace them and give you victory over them and heal the breasts of believing people and remove the anger of their believers' hearts. Allah accepts the repentance of whom He wills. Allah is all-knowing, all-wise." Quran 9:13 through 1. The nation of honor and respect. But honor, power, and glory belong to Allah and to His messenger, Muhammad, peace be upon him, and to the believers. Quran 63:8. So do not become weak against your enemy, nor be sad. You will be superior in victory if you are indeed true believers. Quran 3:139. The nation of martyrdom, the nation that desires death more than you desire life. Again, this is literally just describing an actual death cult. Like, you know, one of the components of fascism just being a death cult. That's he literally just said the thing out loud. Nation of martyrdom, the nation that desires death more than you desire life. That's a literal death cult for you. That's how deep he is into like his fundamentalist religious thinking. Think not of those who are killed in the way of Allah as dead. Nay, they are alive with their Lord, and they are being provided for. They rejoice in what Allah has bestowed upon them from His bounty, and rejoice for the sake of those who have not yet joined them, but are left behind, not yet martyred, that on them no fear shall come, nor shall they grieve. They rejoice in a grace and a bounty from Allah, and that Allah will not waste the reward of the believers. Quran 3:169 through 171. I do want to pause here and say, again, we need to draw a distinction here, because on the one hand, it is common parlance in the Middle East when someone dies in an accident or in like by bombing or something like that, to call them a martyr. Like it's a common phrase within the Islamic world and the Middle East at large. But there's a distinction here being made between like the common usage of martyr and the extolling of martyrdom, which is the idea that it is actually good for innocents to die as martyrs because now they're in God's hands. It is actually good and almost preferable. It is an honor to die unexpectedly in the name of these larger causes, which is, by the way, part of the rationale Hamas uses. Hamas knew in the preparations to the lead up to the October 7th attacks that their attack would entail a very violent response from Israel, and they were willing to martyr the innocent people, the innocent Palestinians, in order to achieve their goals, which were namely shelving, that's the word I was looking for, shelving like the Saudi Arabian Israel peace talks, and also making sure like that the Muslim world would stay on the side of arming Hamas and supporting Palestinians, and also a number of other propagandistic goals. Like, they're a religious fundamentalist organization, much like Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. Like, they believe in using that same tactic because they have this religious thinking that, like, Yes, well, when those innocent people die, they'll just go to be with God, and everything will be fine, and they'll be provided for, and actually, it's good. It's good. It's good that they died in the name of Allah. Right? So, this same thinking is just a death cult mentality. It's part of why religious, and by the way, it exists in the minds of like religious fundamentalists of all stripes. You'll find it in evangelical Christians as well, who are far right. Like that, they'll be like, if God needs some people to die in order to do God's will, that's fine. You'll find it in religious zealots of all stripes. So what I'm trying to make clear to you is that this is by no means unique to Osama bin Laden. It's not unique to Hamas. It's not unique to fundamentalist Islam. It is endemic in fundamentalist religious thinking. Okay. The nation of victory and success that Allah has promised. It is he who has sent his messenger, Muhammad, peace be upon him, with guidance and the religion of truth, Islam, to make it victorious over all other religions, even though the polytheists hate it. Quran 61:9. Allah has declared that verily it is I and my messengers who shall be victorious. Verily Allah is all-powerful, almighty. Quran 58:21. The Islamic nation that was able to dismiss and destroy the previous evil empires like yourself, the nation that rejects your attacks, wishes to remove your evils, and is prepared to fight you. You are well aware that the Islamic nation, from the very core of its soul, despises your haughtiness and arrogance. If the Americans refuse to listen to our advice and the goodness, guidance, and great righteousness that we call them to, then be aware that you will lose this crusade Bush began, just like the other previous crusades in which you were humiliated by the hands of the Mujahideen, fleeing to your home in great silence and disgrace. If the Americans do not respond, then their fate will be that of the Soviets who fled from Afghanistan to deal with their military defeat, political breakup, ideological downfall, and economic bankruptcy. This is our message to the Americans as an answer to theirs. Do they know why we fight them, and over which form of ignorance? By the permission of Allah, we shall be victorious. So, to wrap this up, like Osama bin Laden, one of the sons of Saud, the fail son of a billionaire's company. Like, became a religious fundamentalist and dedicated the fail son of Saud. It is impressive that TikTok has just continued with this insanity. Like, having now read it, it is very clearly virulently anti-Semitic. Like, this is anti-Semitism that, like, maybe I mean, Protocols of the Elders of Zion is like one of the most anti-Semitic things I can think of, but this is like so blatantly anti-Semitic that you should be able to tell that it is, at the very least. It might not be quite on the level of the Protocols, but it's like, maybe like a step or two down, which is still insanely anti-Semitic, right? And not only that, but like there's death cult thinking in there. There is the clear intention to like strip rights, to view democracy as evil. It's very clear that he hates queer people, trans people. Like, there are like, and that he is a religious fundamentalist who wants to found a global theocracy. Like, it's not difficult to understand what he's getting at in there. Yeah, and that's the thing, Bill Casey. You can find people who criticize America and who criticize Israel and their policies and their actions on the global stage and their actions internally who aren't Osama bin Laden. And if you're turning to Osama bin Laden for this stuff, you are just like open and susceptible to any dipshit who's telling you America's bad. You are vulnerable. You're like a newborn baby. You need to educate yourself on these topics so that you aren't taken advantage of by any two-bit charlatan who wants to convince you to strap a bomb vest to your chest. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is on par, I think, with people who fall for the Unabombers shit. Like, there are people out there who think that the Unabomber was some, like, he was, sure, he built bombs, but he was building bombs so that, like, he could prevent the world from taking advantage of all the natural resources that the planet has to offer and, saving it and preserving it for future generations. No, the Unabomber wrote openly about hating people and wanting to kill people just because he wanted to kill people. Like, in his diaries, just openly wrote about how his only goal was to make sure his bombs killed somebody. And like so many people would just uncritically read his manifesto and be like, oh yeah, no dog, sure, there was a lot of contradictions in that, but dude just wanted to protect the environment. No, he didn't. If you do like 5 seconds of research beyond just finding that manifesto, it's pretty easy to know what exactly he wanted. And it's the same with Osama bin Laden. If you read this and somehow you reached the end of it and you were like, well, sure, kind of a few flaws here and there, but Osama bin Laden was pretty based. That's just because you haven't spent like the 5 seconds necessary on Google to find like someone who's not a terrorist who killed thousands of people in the name of a global theocratic movement that seeks to like instill a death cult mentality into every man, woman, and child on the planet. You didn't spend the 5 seconds necessary to find somebody else, or to figure out that actually he might not have been like completely honest about all of his motivations. These people at the beginning are like, well, I consider myself pretty media literate, and why? Why on earth would you consider yourself media literate when you bought this hook, line, and sinker? Ah, for fuck's sake. Have I read Theory? I've read all Theory. All of it. Like, and by the way, when I say that Osama bin Laden was a fail son, literally the 9/11 Commission, which, by the way, again, this stuff is not hidden online anywhere. Like, you can just find the documents like the 9/11 Commission online. The government isn't trying to hide it from you. Has a document here that was commissioned to figure out like how Al Qaeda operates and stuff. And I was just interested to look up where Al Qaeda was getting its funding, because I had always assumed that like Al Qaeda got its funding from like, Osama bin Laden's family fortune. But it's very interesting here. For many years, the United States thought bin Laden financed Al Qaeda's expenses through a vast personal inheritance or through the proceeds of the sale of his Sudanese businesses. Neither was true. Bin Laden was alleged to have inherited approximately $300 million when his father died, funds used while in Sudan and Afghanistan. This money was thought to have formed the basis of financing for al-Qaeda. Only after NSC initiated interagency trips to Saudi Arabia in 1999 and 2000, and after the interviews of the Bin Laden family members in the United States, because guess what? Again, the Bin Laden family is one of the wealthiest families on the planet, and they come to the United States. Like, it's not like they're all like rooting for their Osama bin Laden in the Bin Laden household. Was the myth of bin Laden's fortune discredited. From about 1970 to 1993 or 1994, Osama bin Laden received about $1 million per year, adding up to a significant sum, to be sure, but not a $300 million fortune. In 1994, the Saudi government forced the bin Laden family to find a buyer for Osama's share of the family company and to place the proceeds into a frozen account. The Saudi freeze had the effect of divesting bin Laden of what would have otherwise have been a $300 million fortune. Notwithstanding this information, some within the government continued to cite the $300 million figure well after 9/11, and the general public still gives credence to the notion of a multimillionaire bin Laden, which, to be fair, he was between 1970 and 1993. Like, that's 23 years. Like, he had $23 million. But yeah, dude was being given $1 million a year for just being related to his father. Yeah, no, the construction company is literally still called Saudi Bin Laden Group. Nor were Bin Laden's assets in Sudan a source of money for al-Qaeda. Bin Laden was reputed to own 35 companies in Sudan, where he lived there from 1992 to 1996, but some may never have actually been owned by him and others were small or not economically viable. Bin Laden's investments may have been designed to gain influence with the Sudanese government rather than a revenue source. When bin Laden was pressured to leave Sudan in 1996, the Sudanese government apparently expropriated his assets and seized his accounts, so that he left Sudan with practically nothing. When bin Laden moved to Afghanistan in 1996, his financial situation was dire. It took months for him to get back on his feet. While relying on the good graces of the Taliban, bin Laden reinvigorated his fundraising efforts and drew on the ties to wealthy Saudi nationals that he developed during his days fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan. So I need you all to like contextualize that information real quick. He was Osama bin Laden was the ultimate fail son. Okay? He was such a fundamentalist religious zealot that, like, he got disowned and disbarred by the Saudi government. Like, he was such a fail son that with millions of dollars at his disposal, he invested in Sudan, and the Sudanese government hated him so much they took all of his shit when he left. When he went to Afghanistan, he had to find a new grift to get money. The funding of al-Qaeda was often through donations from wealthy benefactors or from, like, you know, non-involved, ignorant groups who were trying to do good in the region. Like, to put like this in perspective, Osama bin Laden basically became like an evangelical, like, prosperity gospel preacher. Like, his fundraising efforts were predicated on being ever more fundamentally religious and like cultivating this idea of like a religious fervor and religious action by donating to him, both to his, like, you know, personal connections and also when portraying the group or you know, through whatever intermediaries he would use to raise funds. It basically became a gigantic prosperity gospel scam in Afghanistan. And I mean, I can't imagine anything more pathetic. And people on TikTok are just falling for this hook, line, and sinker. And y'all, you need to do some introspection and like educate yourself more on this, because otherwise, like, some flim flam man is gonna come into town and offer to sell you like a marching band, and you're just gonna be like, I want to buy a marching band. I love music. And he's like gonna be like, I'll teach all your kids how to play music, as consistent with Sharia law. And you'll be like, oh, that's wonderful. And then he's not gonna know how to play any music, and he's gonna just goof off with the kids and then run out of town with all your money. Okay, like that is your story if you don't work on yourself and you don't educate yourself. And that's like the most fun version of that story, because it's predicated on like a reference to a musical. But there are worse versions of that story where you lose like all of your wealth by investing in NFTs, or you accidentally join a cult and they take everything from you, and like you eventually die penniless and alone. So please, for the love of God, look into shit for more than 5 seconds. Jack, are you describing the plot of The Music Man? Yes. Yes, I am. Because I like musicals. Because I'm gay. Oh. And segment. Jack is gay? Kinda. I'm bisexual. Someone is going to post Mein Kampf in some words changed and not tell TikTok what it is. Unironically, Sashi, I've been talking for like 6 hours straight, so pardon me if I'm stumbling over my words a little bit. Gay? Okay, wow. Subscribing. No! Fun story about The Music Man. My partner had never seen The Music Man before, and I really like The Music Man. Like, it's one of those musicals I would throw on TV while I baked cookies. And so we started watching The Music Man, and halfway through, she turned and looked at me in the eyes and was just like, is there a dusk till dawn moment coming? And I was like, I've never seen From Dusk Till Dawn, so I don't know exactly what you mean by that. And she's like, okay, well, just put it on. I was like, okay. So in the middle of watching The Music Man, we put on From Dusk Till Dawn and watched the entire thing. We watched the entire thing, and as the credits began rolling on From Dusk Till Dawn, she turned to me and was like, so, is it? I was like, is what? Is there a From Dusk Till Dawn moment coming? I'm like, in The Music Man? She's like, yeah. It's like, no. No, there's not. There's not a From Dusk Till Dawn moment. From those of you who haven't seen Dusk Till Dawn, basically the first, I don't know, 2/3 of the movie is like a straight up like ultra violent thriller, and the final third of the movie is just goofy monsters attacking a bunch of these people who've been in a serious movie up until that point. Also, Selma Hayek feat. That's my summary of From Dusk Till Dawn. So my partner was trying to ask me if in the middle of The Music Man there was suddenly going to be a huge tonal shift where the children just start like beating the adults to death with their instruments because there's, I don't know, like some sort of Children of the Corn situation going on in the local cornfields. Like, I was just like, no, that's not happening. It was one of my favorite moments. Also, yes, Selma Hayek is a fine ass lady in that movie. My conservative parents took me and my sister to see Till Dusk Till Dawn. Oh my god. Are there any penis guns in this? Selma Hayek is like has always been fine. There's never been a like Selma Hayek is one of those people who's just going to be attractive forever. You know? God. No, we did not watch the rest of the Music Man. we did not do that. She's not a huge fan of musicals. Trouble with a capital T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool. Also, folks, I've now been going for almost 6 hours, and we did not take a break during that incredibly long Letter to America segment. So, folks, please, if any of that was fun for you guys to watch, hit the follow button. If you got anything interesting, if you learned anything, if you had your eyes opened to how silly TikTokers are being, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button too, and also consider liking the stream, because currently, how many likes are we sitting at? Have we hit the funny sex number? Did you guys hit the sex number? You guys did! We got 77 likes. Good job, everybody. But now we need 30. We need 23 more likes. Let's go. 23 more likes. I believe in you. I think we can get 100 likes on this stream. I know we can hit 100 likes on this stream. That was a long sprint of a segment. Yeah, I couldn't really stop, you know? Like, it's a 4,000 word document and a lot of stuff to talk about with it. Yeah, also, I saw someone mention Last Starfighter, and yeah, I don't know what that actor's name is, but seeing like the Music Man in The Last Starfighter for me was iconic. Jack is a gamer. It's true, I am. I went to YouTube after Twitch gave me ads. That is how it goes. Also, my dude, thank you so much for the raid, and also, again, President Sunday, thank you for the raid. You never confirmed if Bin Laden condemned Hamas. How have I never known of this woman before? Which woman before? And folks, if you got anything valuable out of that, I do rely on your subs and donos in order to live. My channel is not yet big enough to actually rely on ad revenue at all. Like, in terms of ad revenue, I make like, I don't know, maybe I don't know, $1 per hour. Like, it's crazy. She was in Puss in Boots? Who are you talking about? Didn't that TikTok person say it was just 2 pages? Were they reading a shortened version? There's also a version of Letter to America. Let me pull up right here. Posted on Bin Laden's bookshelf, by the way, just in case you're wondering where it is. Is it publicly available U.S. documents? No. This one? No. Was it English language books? Media articles? Other religious documents? Okay, you know what? It's hard to find in here. I'm just gonna Google letter to America bin Laden. So there's also this one, which is a 4-page document, which is like letter to the American people, and it's slightly different. There's also no, it's not that one. So, yeah, you can see there's this one, which is 2 pages. Yeah, I guess I can read this one real quick. In the name of Allah, the compassionate and merciful, from Osama bin Laden, Mohammed bin Muhammad bin Laden, to the American people, I speak to you about the subject of the ongoing war between you and us. Even though the consensus of your wise thinkers and others is that your time, TN, of defeat will come, compassion for the women and children who are being unjustly killed, wounded, and displaced in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan motivates me to speak to you. Again, this man does not have compassion for these people. We have well established. First of all, I would like to say that your war with us is the longest war in your history and that the most expensive war for you financially. As for us, we see it as being only halfway finished. If you were to ask your wise thinkers, they would tell you that there is no way to win it because the indications are against it. How will you win a war whose leaders are pessimistic and whose soldiers are committing suicide? If fear enters the hearts of men, winning the war becomes impossible. How will you win a war whose cost is like a hurricane blowing violently at your economy and weakening your dollar? The Bush administration got you into these wars on the premise that they were vital to your security. He promised that it would be a quick war, one within 6 days or 6 weeks. However, 6 years have passed, and they are still promising your victory and not achieving it. Then Obama came and delayed the withdrawal that he promised you by 16 more months. He promised you victory in Afghanistan and set a date for withdrawal from there. 6 months later, Petraeus came to you once again with the number 6, requesting that the withdrawal be delayed 6 months beyond the date that had been set. All the while, you continue to bleed in Iraq and Afghanistan. You are wading into a war with no end in sight on the horizon, which has no connection to your security, which was confirmed by the operation of Umar Farouk, which was not launched from the battlefield and could have been launched from any place in the world. As for us, jihad against the tyrants and aggressors is a form of great worship in our religion. It is more precious to us than our fathers and sons. Thus, our jihad against you is worship, and your killing us is a testimony. Thanks to God Almighty, we have been waging jihad for 30 years against the Russians and then against you. Not a single one of our men has committed suicide, whereas I don't believe this is true. Whereas every 30 days, 30 of your men commit suicide. Continue the war if you will. 2 lines of poetry that say the Mujahideen will not stop fighting until the United States leaves their land. Peace be upon those who follow right guidance. We are defending our right. Jihad against the aggressors is a form of great worship in our religion, and killing us means a high status with our Lord. Thanks to God, we have been waging jihad for 30 years against the Russians and against you. Not a single one of our men has committed suicide, whereas every 30 days... Okay, it just repeats itself. Justice is the strongest army, and security is the best way of life, but it slipped out of your grasp the day you made the Jews victorious in occupying our land and killing our brothers in Palestine. The path to security is for you to lift your oppression from us. I don't think that I don't think if you grant that this is the 2-page document that one person was talking about, that this is a life-changing document either. Yeah, again, like suicide bombers don't commit suicide when, again, they are members of a death cult religion that is fueled by fundamentalist religiosity. They don't believe that is suicide. So, yeah.